actually going to get the most out of a tiny desktop that costs as much as a mid-range laptop? Is it a solid fit for a home office that just needs a reliable workhorse, or does it belong in a corporate IT closet where remote manageability is king? And, for anyone sitting on a tight budget, does the price make sense compared to a traditional tower or a decent all-in-one? Those are the questions that keep me up at night before I click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through why the HP EliteDesk 8 G1i feels like a love letter to the quiet office crowd, and why the same design could be a deal-breaker for anyone who expects a gaming rig or a DIY upgrade playground. I've spent the last few weeks setting this mini up in 3 very different environments: a cramped co-working desk, a small retail checkout station, and a home office where I juggle video calls, spreadsheets, and a couple of 4K monitors. The goal here isn't to brag about raw benchmarks, it's to translate the specs into everyday realities that matter when you actually press the power button. First off, the size. At roughly the dimensions of a paperback book, the EliteDesk 8 slides onto a shelf or tucks behind a monitor with virtually no footprint. If you've ever tried to squeeze a tower into a cramped cubicle, you'll appreciate that this thing disappears. The trade-off, however, is that the chassis only houses one M.2 slot and the RAM is soldered onto the board, so you're stuck with 32 GB of DDR5 for the life of the machine. For most office tasks, that's more than enough, but if you were hoping to add a second SSD or upgrade to 64 GB down the line, you'll hit a wall. The Core Ultra 7265T is HP's latest AI-enhanced silicon. In practice, it feels like a solid big-core, low-power CPU. Opening dozens of browser tabs, running Outlook, Teams, and a couple of background sync services never caused a noticeable lag. When I threw a light video editing workflow into the mix, cutting together a 10-minute tutorial using the built-in GPU acceleration in Premiere Rush, the render times were respectable for a device without a dedicated graphics card. If you're a power user who relies on heavy GPU acceleration for 3D rendering or high-end gaming, the integrated graphics will feel like a ceiling you can't climb. One of the headline features is vPro technology, which is essentially a remote management toolbox for IT departments. In the retail test, the store's IT admin was able to push security patches, encrypt the drive, and even run a diagnostic without ever stepping foot inside the back office. That level of manageability is priceless for businesses that need to keep a fleet of machines compliant without a lot of on-site tech support. For a solo home user, that might be overkill, but the extra security layers like TPM 2.0 and Windows 11 Pro's built-in BitLocker do give peace of mind if you handle sensitive data. Now, let's talk about the ports. The front panel offers a single USB-C with power delivery, 2 USB-A 3.2 ports, HDMI 2.1, and a headphone jack. The rear adds another HDMI, a DisplayPort, a LAN jack, and a second USB-C. You can comfortably run a dual monitor setup, which I did using 2 4K panels at 60 Hz. The experience was buttery smooth, and the integrated graphics handled office-type video playback without dropping frames. The downside is the lack of Thunderbolt 4, a feature that some power users consider essential for fast external storage or eGPU connections. If you need to plug in a high-speed RAID array or an external GPU, you'll be out of luck. Storage-wise, the 512GB SSD feels speedy right out of the box. Boot times are sub 30 seconds, and loading large Excel workbooks is practically instantaneous. The space is enough for a typical office workload, but if you're dealing with large media libraries or extensive CAD files, you'll need an external solution. The good news is the SSD is user replaceable, so you can swap it for a larger model if you're comfortable opening the case. Just remember you won't be able to add a second drive. So, who should press buy now? If you run a small business, manage a handful of remote workstations, or need a discrete computer that can sit behind a monitor in a public space, the EliteDesk 8 checks the boxes. Its built-in security, vPro remote management, and quiet operation make it a perfect candidate for point-of-sale terminals, conference rooms, or a compact office desk where noise is a concern. The 32 gigabytes of RAM and SSD also give it enough headroom to handle multiple productivity apps simultaneously without a hiccup. Who